Hello, welcome to JavaScript Fundamentals tutorial. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to define JavaScript functions using three major different types of functions. And the functions we shall be concentrating on are the named function, the arrow function, and the last but not the least, immediately invoked function expressions. Now, without wasting much time, let's dive into the very first function, which is the named function. Now, basically, what do we even use functions for? A function simply means a set of code that actually allows you to perform some actions, which you may actually do or find it necessary to reuse those actions. So instead of repeating yourself over and over again, you could actually bundle up a set of instructions into a function. So now let's start with the very first one. How does a function actually look like? Now, a function will have to start with a keyword function for a named function in this case. And of course, the name of the function will be, I want to choose a name. You could actually decide to choose any name, but make sure that you're obeying identifier naming conventions, which is more like variable naming conventions. So if you are making use of function names, ensure that there are no spaces in between keywords that make up your function. And of course, you can decide to separate keywords by using a snake casing, or you can make use of other casings like Pascal casing, or better still, camel casing. So here I'm going to write the name of my function, and of course the next thing is for me to put a parenthesis, open and close parenthesis. Now, in this parenthesis, I could have something like maybe a name. All right. So whatever I have inside this parenthesis will be called parameters. So parameters are more like placeholders for the actual thing you want to replace it with when you're invoking a function. So there are two aspects of this function. The first one is the function definition, which is what I'm doing now. I'm defining a function. And finally, here you will have to decide to bundle up your code within curly braces. So this curly braces is actually where I am going to type in the instructions that the function should be executing. Now, the very first is the only instruction I want this to execute is on the console. I want it to actually, say hello to whatever name that is passed to it. So I will simply use console, which you already know how to use, console.log, and of course, I'm going to start by saying hello, whatever name, I will concatenate. So the name, and this is it. Now, a function cannot actually run without you explicitly invoking it, especially the named functions. Okay, so now if we look at what we have here, for instance, you are going to see that this function doesn't return anything on the console yet. Okay, so for us to make sure that our function returns something in the console, we have to explicitly invoke that function. To invoke this function, we can start by simply typing the function name, which is display, and open and close parenthesis with an actual name. So the name I want here is John Doe. Right? So in this case, the name you have passed in here will be referred to as an argument. which is the actual name that is replacing the parameter that you used to define your function from its definition. So now let's look at what will happen when we check our code and confirm. So as you can see, we have hello John Doe, right? So this is basically how to declare a function in JavaScript, the name function to start with. All right, so having declared this, we have to continue with the next function that we have here, which is the arrow function. How do we start declaring arrow function? Now I'm going to just leave this here because I want to replicate what I have here as my function basically. So now the name of the function is this. Arrow function works in this way. I want to redefine this function using the arrow function technique. Now to do this, I'm basically going to use a constant keyword to define the function. The name of the function is display, so I want it to still remain display equals. Now how do I start with this function? It's basically you having a parenthesis, open and close, okay, and you have an arrow with a curly brace, which is going to include the body of your function. So now this curly brace is going to have, now sorry, I also didn't take note of the parameter, so I'm going to quickly include the parameter in this parenthesis. So now within the curly brace, I will simply embed the code, that's the instructions that I want my function to execute. So at this point, I'm going to leave the code the same way, just like we have here. And when I comment out this, I am actually going to see the same result. So now let's simply just look at what we have to check whether we have the same results. Okay, so as you can see, my page has been refreshed and I still have the same result. So this is basically how to make use of an arrow function. Okay, all right. So having talked about the arrow function, it's time for us to now talk about the last function that we are going to be concentrating on here, which is more like technically called immediately invoked function expressions, which is IIFE. So what does this function mean? It's a function that has no name to start with. So it's more like a function that you don't have a need to reuse over and over again. So it becomes necessary for us to make use of this function if we know that whatever code we are embedding within the function might not necessarily be needed at some point in our code. So to write this kind of function, we have to actually start with I'm going to just comment this out so that we don't get confused about our code. So we have a clean slate now, right? Okay, so I will simply type in something that looks a little bit different from what we've been using. So to start an immediately invoked function, so what we are going to do is to have our parentheses opened. All right, so Now, within this parenthesis lies where our code instructions will be featured. And of course, because I want to invoke this function immediately, at the end of the parenthesis, you include yet another parenthesis, which is more like a parenthesis that will suggest that you want to execute this instruction. Now remember what happened here. I have a function name and I have a parenthesis. Okay, so now my function name here with the parenthesis shows that I want to execute the function. You can actually have a function without any parenthesis or parameter, as the case may be. So, but that means you are going to have this clean. So here, I want to start by writing something, all right, a function. So for me to start writing a function that is an IIFE function, I will use the keyword function, because of course I'm typing a function with the open and close parenthesis, and of course curly brace, and I am going to console something which is going to be welcome to my IIFE function. And here is it. Now let's check what this would do. I do not need to explicitly call the function somewhere here because the function is immediately invoked. What does that mean? To invoke a function simply means to call the function to action. A function cannot work normally without calling it. So to call this immediately invoked function, I have included this parenthesis at the end. Now to call the previous functions, we have defined these two functions. Then I have actually included the parenthesis with, of course, an argument to replace whatever parameter that I have there. So having done this, let's switch to our browser and check what happens there. Okay, now switching to this browser, you can see that we have welcome to my IIFE function. So that's it, guys. This is how to define functions in 3 ways. Remember, the very first function, which is a name function, must have a kind of a name that you have to use the keyword function to define. And of course, you will have to make sure that if you are using a parameter, you include it there and you can make use of it in your instruction. So likewise, it's just similar to the second one, which is an arrow function, whereby you have a variable created as the name of the function, and of course you have this arrow kind of technique of defining the same function. Now the last one is the IIFE function, which you have to call by including a parenthesis at the end. So thanks for watching, and I hope you subscribe, and I believe that this video has been useful to you. Please kindly share and click on the notification bell for more. So I shall be dropping a contact, an email that you can send me whatever question that you have or whatever video you want me to make in the future. And of course, whatever help you might need help with, you can always reach out. So basically, thanks for watching once again, and see you in my next video. Bye.